This year's census will determine how you and your household is represented in your state and federal government for the next decade. And the choices we and our government make over this decade will determine what our planet and our lives look like for centuries to come. Don't let other people make these important decisions for you. Take the census today. This is Bob Grove with the Climate Council of Greater Kansas City. Go to 2020census.gov to make sure that your voice counts. And visit the climategkc.org to learn more about climate change.
Thanks, Bob. To reinforce what Bob just said, I think you should know that each year the U.S. federal government distributes roughly $2,000 per person to state and local governments. It does this primarily based on the decennial census. I'm not sure, but I suspect that the 2010 census is being used today to distribute even more money this year than last. As Bob indicated, if you want your local schools and your other local government agencies to get their fair share of that money, complete the census. Otherwise, your $2,000 will go to some other part of the U.S. You can complete the census online at 2020census.gov. That's 2020census.gov. The census is completely confidential for 72 years, over 7 decades. Many people use old census data to research family history. People today can see how their ancestors answered the census questions in 1940. In another 3 years, we'll be able to see the 1950 census. 72 years from now, long after most of us are gone, people will be able to see your answers and mine. Lynn Norris, tell us about your experiences with the census.
My mom worked for the 1980 census, and I worked for the 1990 and 2000 censuses. And the information that you submit to the census is really very helpful, not just for your district and other things. A lot of people use it for studies. For my graduate degree, I was doing a study on Hispanic content in U.S. daily major newspapers. And in order to do that, I had to be able to identify which articles were written about Hispanic people. And I managed to get a special confidential list from the census of all the Hispanic surnames. So I could look up the names of the people in the stories and know who was Hispanic and who wasn't. I was also able to get population statistics for the cities that the newspapers were in. And using that information, I was able to determine whether the coverage in the newspapers had the quantity and quality that you would expect if they were treating Hispanics fairly. And as it turned out, my study showed that the newspapers were actually doing a really good job, except for the one that was in California. And that one had a little bit too much crime stuff. And so that was helpful to know, so that then journalists could change the way that they were doing their jobs.
The current deadline for completing the census is September 30.
Be part of the census. Visit 2020census.gov. It's your future.